Well, good morning, everybody. I think we'll start and then we'll let everybody else join us a little bit late. Obviously, the school run has been a bit hectic for some this morning. I'd like to introduce Kat Lord this morning, who is going to talk to us about organising. Would you like to do a little introduction there, Kat?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name's Kathryn Lord, and I am the award-winning author of There's More to Books Than Reading and also More to Organising, and that's what I'll be talking about today.
Thank you. I'll let you go ahead. Kat's happy for people to write in the chat if they've got any questions during the session. It's a quite informal session, so don't feel that you have to wait until the end. I'll pass over to you then, Kat. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Julia English asked me to title this as Organising for Success. So I very much planned this for helping you be successful as a parent, as a teacher, teaching your children, but also it's the success of your children that I'm most excited about. So why me? Why organising? I am absolutely obsessed with the Home Edit and Marie Kondo and Sort Your Life Out. And I am actually in the Home Style magazine of April 2023, right next to my idols. I've been featured in many magazines and newspapers, and I've been interviewed on BBC Radio. Before this, I have had 5 years of interiors therapy with Suzanne Roynan. So I really got organised in my home life. And then because I've been a nanny for nearly 9 years, I started applying what I'd learned in my home life to my nanny family lives. And I just saw how the children thrived. I do have a diploma in decluttering and organising. I'm a member of Association of Professional Declutterers and Organisers, and I organise nurseries, classrooms, family homes, and I support house moves as well. I'm actually the award-winning author of I'm an award-winning author of my first book, but I won Best Newcomer Professional Organiser of the Year in 2022. It's because I look at organising very differently. As you can tell by the title, More to Organising, I have it with child development in mind. I have been an expert on the parenthood panel at the Clean and Tidy Home Show. I've been an expert on early years television with organising with children in mind. I've also been a speaker at the Childcare and Education Expo, International Nanny Training Day, Nanny Palooza, and Nurseries Hire Me privately as well. Why I do it with children in mind, why it's child development that is most important. I actually studied to master's level in education, and I turned my knowledge of teaching. I did teach in the classroom for 6 years. I call myself a disenchanted teacher. I left the profession because, especially listening to all the ideas that were talked about yesterday in the first meeting, I became disenchanted with the English education system, and that's why I moved to teaching into the home. My first job, I was actually called a governess, so I was teaching children, and now I teach nannies and early years practitioners on how to do it in the home. I love the equipping, enabling, empowering, and encouraging, which is the 4 E words that are about the Learn Free conference. And I know that's for yourselves as parents, but I actually believe that for the children, and both my books are about equipping, enabling, empowering, and encouraging our children in their learning. So I'm going to quickly go through what the More To method is, and then I'm going to ask you some questions. So I would really love your involvement as well. So my More To method is literally MORETO. The first 4 are what all organisers do. So figure out your messy areas, out with the old, get rid of anything that you don't use. Room optimization, that's a really important one for moving things around to make it make sense. And evaluate what makes sense. Now, that's a really important one because common sense is not common. And lots of people think what common sense is, but that's what we want to teach our children, right? Common sense. But different families believe in different common sense. And what makes sense for your family won't make sense for another. It's actually something that Juliet said yesterday, that every child is different and we need to serve the needs of each and every child. And as she said, not every need of the children is the same. So to the TO ones, that's the special bit, that's the exciting bit that I give you. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is toddler or child-friendly organisation systems and opportunities for learning. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'd like you to pop in the chat, what do we mean by success for your children? What do you think success would be for you, for your children? Good habits. Thank you, Iona. Any more? Happy, yeah. Content and curious, brilliant. Well-mannered. Fantastic. Able to work and hold down a job. Thank you for your contributions. Any more? So yesterday, Julia English, in the first speech that we listened to, she said that her daughter came to her and said that she felt she was less than the other children. And I think what's really important, and what Julia English said, is that she wants her daughter to feel capable, to believe in herself, to have the opportunities, and to reach their full potential. And with all the things that you've said as well, good habits, curious, happy, I think that is the most important things for ourselves. It's not necessarily academic success, but it's the best that they can be. So I'm going to quickly talk about if you organize the rooms, then your routines will become better. So if our meal times or our bath times or our sleep routines or our learning is very, very tricky, what we need to do is organize the room that habit ends up in. So for our meal times, we need to organize our kitchen. For bath time, obviously the bathroom. For sleeping routines, we need to organize our bedroom. And for learning, we need to organize the playroom. For meal times, which is the one I'm going to focus on, which is interesting that the other lady's also talking about how to learn reading in the kitchen. There's so much more than reading that we can do. Reading is one of the main ones that we can definitely do, because what I encourage all the children that I work with as a nanny, as I said, I've been working as a nanny for over 9 years now, for many different families, many different ages, is to pour through the recipe books and have a look at all the different pictures at the beginning, but also it helps them to look at the ingredients, it helps them to look at the lists as well. So you can look at recipe books, you can look at menus as well, just to get exciting ideas with your children. I believe that the children should be part of the whole experience, because this will help them in their future. It's not only important for health and well-being, but there's much more value of learning from this process. And there's lots of writing opportunities or mark making opportunities that we can have from meal planning. So they can write shopping lists, instruction writing, which is our imperative verbs. Now, what is really important for me, and what I write in both my books, is that these are organic opportunities. These are learning for purpose. The last thing we want to do, and actually it was someone said something yesterday, not just doing, it was Harriet said, doing maths home worksheets from school, and the children didn't want to do them, and it was just a very negative experience. What I believe, and what I want to empower and excite you to do, is have learning for purpose. So if there's a reason behind it, your children are more likely to want to do it. And also, I'll come on to interest in a minute as well. So if your children aren't at the stage where they are writing, drawing pictures of what you need to buy is absolutely fine, because this is the first step in our process to supporting us to then write a list. And it's still mark making opportunities. You can also talk about nutrition and balanced meals and moderation while you're meal planning. So it's not that we're healthy or not healthy. It's more like we need to make sure that we have our vitamins, our carbohydrates, our protein in our balanced meals across the week, right? And when we're meal planning, one of the most exciting and most interesting learning experiences that my children that I have looked after have learned is when we go and actually pick the vegetables ourselves. So if they're involved in the meal planning and they actually go and dig up the carrots, and wash them and help you with the prepping, they're more likely to eat them. And we'll come on to that in a minute. Maths, there's so much math that you do, obviously, in cooking and baking, but looking at the dates of food in your cupboard, my favorite thing to do with children when I get a new role is to pull all the food out of their cupboards, the tins, even the herbs and spices, but you've got to be sensible about the spices depending on the age of your children, because you don't want them getting in their eyes. So it is definitely not necessarily age appropriate, but it has to be developmentally appropriate. So if you pull them all out and then look at the dates, so you can look at just the years and order them by year, and to differentiate it for children who are a bit more advanced, you can look at the months and then even the dates. The best thing to do is try and find the oldest thing in your cupboard, because obviously you might not want to eat that. Dates you've got to be careful with, because it doesn't mean that they've gone off. It could just mean that they're just no longer as I've forgotten the word, I'm sorry. It, like beans, you might be able to eat them if they've gone out of date, but it's up to your discretion. So be really careful with meats and other things like that. And interesting fact I found out about garlic, that can get you really ill if you eat that too out of date. But what I will say is, if you've got lots of things in your cupboards that are far over the date, it's probably that you don't like them, rather than that you're not going to eat them. So get rid. They don't need to spend time in your cupboard. So prepping your vegetables, you can teach children about the hygiene, but prepping vegetables and fruit and all food is a really good fine motor skill. So our fine motor skills obviously will then end up helping with our handwriting and mark making, which is what we would like them to do. But there's so many things you can do. So there's peelers that you can get that are very safe. So they cover up bits like that, and you can peel like that. So it's very safe for them. Again, I said not necessarily age developmentally, but it can be, it depends on their skills. You don't give them a sharp knife. But one thing I will say, which we're going to talk about safety as well in this, is if you give your child a blunt knife, and it's actually first aid providers say this, they're more likely to hurt themselves with a blunt knife than they are a sharp knife when they're using it properly. And obviously maths, again, measuring and learning about shape is really important when prepping. Cooking is obviously a lot of science involved, but I think it's a bit of art as well. Changing matter, liquids, solids, gases, and life skills. And then decorating if you're baking, patterns and creativity. So I believe in meal planning and batch cooking. This saves time, saves money, and is less stressful. So the next thing we're going to talk about is enabling the environment, which it's an education buzzword, but I've applied it from schools and nurseries into the home in many homes, and I go into people's homes to support parents to make sure, because lots of theorists believe the environment is the third teacher, and I do believe that, and we want to encourage autonomy in our children. So in the chat, can you just pop in, what do you think I mean by that, like autonomy, or what do you think autonomy might mean, and how do you encourage it at the moment? Yeah, making themselves a snack. Thank you. Any more? Able to choose healthy things. Older kids to help with food prep. Actually, the younger you start, the more likely they are. I have, she's now 5, but I've started working with her when she was 3, and she would separate peas out into bowls. And the first time she did it, she poured the peas and they went everywhere, all over the floor. And obviously that's not what we wanted. But I didn't tell her off. I said, oh dear, let's pick them up together. We're a team. So we swept them up. And the next time I didn't actually tell her what to do. She went to get a spoon and she did it again. Now, what I could have done in that situation is say, oh, you can't do it, I'll do it. but actually I want her to keep trying and keep trying. We've got to have an environment that is safe to get things wrong and to try and try again, because we learn from our mistakes. And if we always do everything for them, they won't know how to do it. And physical development is something that they just have to keep trying and practicing before they can get it. We have stools to reach and smaller knives and utensils. Brilliant, thank you. That is the thing, isn't it? If we give them developmentally appropriate tools to be able to help. Now, I wouldn't go and give them an axe to chop the wood for the fire at three, but possibly maybe when they're a bit older, maybe I would. Okay, thank you for your contributions. So to organize with children in mind, first of all, we've got to think of height. They are smaller than us. So I put everything that they need to reach at their height, so then they can be independent. The last thing you want is when you are really busy doing something and they're doing their independent learning, that they constantly need to ask you for something. I will say also on that though, if you've got things that are very noisy or make a lot of mess at certain periods in your day, you don't want them out. You've got to be in control. At some point, you've got to teach them that actually there are a time and a place for certain things. So do put them up high, out of reach, to make sure that they cannot reach them, just for your safety. I am talking about really young children there as well. But actually, we were talking about health there. I think it's important not to have options that we don't want to have just before tea readily available. If they're out of sight, out of mind, is something that happens for adults, not just children. And if you put something away, you do forget about it. So you're more likely to choose the healthier options if they're in view. Colour coordination. Your child knows the colour of their favourite book before they can even read, and they'll know where to put it back as well. I have just done a nursery organisation, and we didn't colour coordinate the books because we themed the books. So as your children are older, you can theme the books into, instead of colour coordinating them. And if they're really interested in space that week, then they can find all the space books. I actually had a really interesting question from the 5-year-old that I work with in the morning. He said, is the middle of the middle of the sun made out of earth? And his mum said, what do you mean? I don't know what you mean. And then they had a discussion whether it was made out of rock or something. So obviously we went to get the books and we looked it up, and it's fire, it's gas, there's a special word for it, and it's 2 gases perfectly balanced, and there's no rock in there at all. So he's 5 and he knows that now because he's curious and he's excited. And that's why it's important to just be able to know where that book is and be able to find it. But obviously now we've got the internet, which is very different to when I grew up. Definitely. Rotation is also something that I would advise, because too many toys causes overwhelm. Even when your children are older, and even adults, if you rotate things, when they come back into your view, when they come back into the place that you can find them easily, they're more exciting. You're more likely to play with them or learn from them more purposefully. But also it means there's less to tidy up. You don't need your farm and your zoo out at the same time. And child-led learning. So I know that Harriet talked about this yesterday. She said her son was really interested in Pokemon, and she learned so much about Pokemon because of his interests. If we follow our children's interests, they're more likely to be excited about what we're learning. And you can learn everything from books and from those topics. And if you want to know more, I have literally written a book about it. You can pick up most interests that they've got and link it to lots of learning. If you use the topics of the guide, then you can go to the libraries, you can go to museums, and you can go to places based on those things. And they're much more intrinsically likely to learn because they're already interested. If we try and teach them things that they're not interested in, just like, I can't remember who it was to Harriet again, saying that if you get homework and you have to sit from the school and you're trying to do something that they really don't want to do, they're going to not like learning, and that's not what we want. Learning, someone said today, we want curious child, and that's what I'm hopefully going to help with your children today. Just back on the organising, if you label everything with words and pictures, everybody in your household will know where things are, because the pictures, if they can't even read yet, then they will be able to see the pictures. But actually, if the picture and the word are next to each other, they'll automatically start linking them together as well, and that will really help. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is learned helplessness. So before we talked about autonomy, we've talked about what we believe is success in our children. If we do everything for our children, they either don't believe they can do it for themselves, or they choose not to do things. So how can we avoid this? Start them young as you can. If your children are already grown up, don't worry. We can still. Someone said today, if we have our children with good habits, then you'll feel that they're more successful. The good news is habits, although are harder when you get older to change, you can change your habits. They say it takes about 18 times to be able to change a habit. So if you keep at it, they will be able to. But my most important thing is teamwork. As I said earlier about when the peas fell on the floor, when anything happens, the word chores is banned. We're not allowed to use it. These are not chores. The things that you have to do in your day-to-day life, like the laundry, like putting things in the dishwasher, like cooking a meal. These are all things that we have to do. So rather than call them chores, it's just life. And especially with parents with very young children, I do say don't fold the laundry while the children are asleep. Do it in front of them, because these are habits that they need to know for when they're older. We're going to have to fold our clothes. We're going to have to put things in the washing machine. It's unfortunately unavoidable. Your expectations. So to avoid learned helplessness, the children, we should have certain expectations that are developmentally appropriate, such as, these are examples that I genuinely do with my children that I work with. Currently, I have 8 children every week at different times. I do expect them to put their own shoes away. I expect them to hang their own coat up. I expect them to put their packed lunch by the sink. And after dinner, I expect them to put their plate by the sink. And I expect them to put their clothes in the laundry basket. Now, to make that extra fun, and it can be a learning thing as well, in the morning with one of the children that I used to work with, I made a basketball hoop, and she had to throw her pajamas in the hoop, and she got points for every if she did it first, second, or third. After the third time, she had to go and get them and put them in, but she still got some points because she still got them in. That's the other thing, is we don't want to stop them doing something, because when you give them external reward like stickers or points or things, then they start to only do things because of the external reward, and actually that's counterproductive. So I will say sometimes the expectations, you have to do them before we can do something else. But if your children are finding it tricky, then points, because it doesn't cost you anything to talk about points. They can try and get better from the day before, and you can developmentally appropriately change the point system depending on the age of your child, and you can change where the basket is. You can bring it closer if your children are younger, so the whole family can be involved, and adults get involved too. It's a lot of fun. As we talked about habits, instilling habits while they're young, it's easier while they're young to get in the habit. So like I said, the 3-year-old who's now 5, she always helps me pair the socks and unroll the towels and napkins. I don't expect her yet to do the other things, because fine motor skills, they're not there yet, but the more she practices, the more she will. The older children don't really want to be involved with that, and I don't force them. That's the other thing. These chores that I don't call chores, if you force them to do something, they're less likely to do it. But then if we talk about teamwork and we have competitions to see who can fold the most or roll the most, they're way more likely to actually be involved with you. And patience, especially with our young children. If we give an environment that is full of patience, so then they can get things wrong and to learn from things, they're more likely to be successful. This also builds self-esteem. So when we let them figure out how to do something for themselves, a bit like the 3-year-old who tried to do the peas and then she figured out that she could use a spoon, that she got such a sense of achievement from that. If I'd have told her that she can't do something, or that I want to do it because I don't want her to pour them all over the floor, then she wouldn't have learned that for herself. And now she realizes that next time she comes up onto something that is a little bit tricky, she can persevere and try again. And we need an environment where it's okay to make mistakes. We learn from our mistakes. So we're going to talk about resilience and risk taking. We're also going to talk about health and safety in a minute, but first of all, I'd like you to pop in the chat, what risk taking do we want our children to do? What do you think? It's quite an open, vague question, because I want to see what you want to say. We do want them to have some risk in their day or life. What kind of risks do you think are good risks? Climbing trees, brilliant, yes? That's an excellent risk. Riding a bike, yeah, because we can't do it until we do it, right? And it is a risk. But not on the road, yeah. So I'm going to come to that as well in a minute. Trying when there's not success, yeah, that's fair enough. Like we said, developmentally appropriate, we don't want it on the road until they're confident, hey? Any more? Trying something new? Any more? Yeah, cooking, knife work. So I'm going to go through the ones that I've got, but you've all said amazing ones, and there might be some even more ones. Getting a new friend, brilliant, Amy. Yes. So there are physical risks, and then there are, I suppose you'd say, emotional risks. So persevering, actually keep on trying to do something that's tricky, builds our resilience. And it is a risk to keep trying when it's tricky, because the tendency is to give up, but then will then lead to learned helplessness if we give up straight away all the time. So we want our children, if we want them to be successful, to be children who keep persevering and keep trying even when things are tricky. Open-ended tasks, someone wrote just then, they want to, I can't remember exactly what you wrote because lots of things are written all at the same time. But if we provide open-ended tasks, ones that haven't actually got an answer, they're more likely to have resilience and take more risks. Trying something new, someone said that could be even food, but it could be trying something that they've never done before, like learning how to play the piano or a musical instrument, or like Iona said, riding a bike is something new. Doing something they struggle with. So it could be tying shoelaces, doing your buttons. If we do it for them, they're going to go, oh, I can't do it, I'm rubbish, and they'll not feel like they can do it. But it could be anything that they struggle with, academically or physically, or anything, a bit like talking. Yes, socks are tricky, especially at the moment. I've got a 7-year-old who goes to football, and we have to pull his socks right up and then put the shin guards in. That's hard for me, never mind him. And speaking to different people is very tricky. Someone said making new friends. It's worrying, isn't it? I've actually just done a workshop in a nursery, and I had 20 adult staff there, and they were worried to talk to each other. So even as adults, we feel the fear, but we need to practice and have resilience. And the environment that we want to share is that it's safe and it's okay. Going somewhere new can be tricky. Well done, Hazel. Trying new activities as well. And then on to the physical ones that we did just talk about. Someone said using implements for cooking. It's not just food implements. Using new tools, using figuring out new objects that could be in play, trying new equipment. So someone said climbing a tree, but it could be climbing new things that are in the playground. Balancing, climbing, jumping. These are all risk-taking that we want them to do. So now, as we said about the road, well done. What health and safety hazards in our environment do we want to make sure definitely doesn't happen, like letting them cycle in the road. Can you type in the chat, what health and safety do we want to make sure we save them from? So there's a difference between wrapping them up in cotton wool and making everything safe, or letting them have a bit of resilience. But what do we want to make sure that is very safe in our environment? I can't see anybody write it. Whoops. Oh, there we go. Put in the scissors. Yeah, it depends on how they're holding them. We can teach them how to hold the scissors. Yeah, they're over. Any more? Like, think in the kitchen, think in the bathroom, think outside. Yes, definitely bleach. Household safety. Yes, the iron, although we'll come on to that. Boiling water, definitely. So I look after a 9-year-old at the moment who is obsessed with popcorn and French toast. And I do let her make them so long as there's an adult in the room. The thing is, the more she's there and that she's provided a safe environment that she can try, the more likely it is that she's going to be able to do it. But you're right. Candles is an interesting one. I was organising a house and she had 2 under 2 and a baby on the way. And the playroom was full of candles. Not only are candles dangerous if you light them, most of them were in glass jars. So that's a health and safety hazard anyway, especially for 2 under 2. And the other thing was you've got to be really careful with candles, because some of them, the paraffin is actually really, really bad for very, very young children's lungs. So that there's a whole other health and safety there. The stove and oven safety, yep. There's new ovens at the moment. There's one of the clients that I had, it was an oven that was not hot on the outside, even if it was hot on the inside. I think that's more dangerous, because then they believe that it's a safe oven, and it's not. Once it's opened, it's too hot. So it's just about providing and giving them the boundaries to make sure they're safe. So trip hazards, developmentally inappropriate items, that which we talked about before. Someone talked about poisons and chemicals, but also expired food, if they're so expired that it will make our children ill. Mold, dust and damp are also a health and safety hazard, because they can get into our lungs. So that's why it's important to create a nice, organized, clean environment, so then that doesn't happen. But the most important, well, not the most important, obviously you don't want them to have expired food or drink bleach or cycle in the road, but their well-being. If you create a calm space where it's usable for them, their well-being is more likely to be a positive one. And life skills. If we organize with our children in mind, then they have better decision making, because we've given them the opportunities to make their decisions as they go along. On that, we talked about decluttering our objects, so then we rotate them, so then we haven't got so much out, so that it's not overwhelming. Actually, when you give decisions, if we declutter, if we reduce the amount of options they have, it's much, much easier for them to choose. So developmentally appropriate, when they're really young, just give them 2 options. You wouldn't like it if you were told what to eat, what to wear, where to go, when to wake up. And we need to realize that for our children, it's not nice to be told what to do, where to go, what to eat. So giving them the options is really important, because then they feel more autonomous, as we talked about earlier. But also, you're going to get less tantrums, you're going to get less backlash, because they'll feel in control of their own lives, which is what we want for their future. Lots of you said that you want them to be able to have jobs and be the best that they can be. What did Juliet English say? Feel capable and reach their full potential. Not only does organising with children in mind help with that, and we talked about cooking, laundry, hygiene, but we want them to be lifelong learners. We want them to be curious about everything, a bit like the little boy this morning, it was yesterday morning, with the sun. If they've got the environment to be able to ask all these questions, they're more likely to be lifelong learners and keep looking for the answers. The other thing that we wanted to talk about today is how to provide a diverse environment. So we're thinking about ethnicity, religion, gender, disability, neurodivergence, and different types of families. The reason why it's important to have this in our environment is because differences should be celebrated, and we can provide this through our books, through our resources, and through the screen time and toys that we have. Not that I necessarily think Barbies are the best toys in the world, but they are actually promoting more diverse toys than most other toy companies. In the year that I was born, it's a really interesting thing, actually. You can go and look it up, find the year of everybody who was born and find out which Barbie came out. A space woman Barbie came out when I was born. But does anybody know what just came out? It was 2 weeks ago. What Barbie came out 2 weeks ago? Anybody? It was a Barbie with Down syndrome. The reason, not only do we want our children to feel represented, but also if we help our children to see that there's diversity and difference, they're more likely to be accepting and I did write down the word that I wanted to say, understanding and informed. That's really important. And also, I want to talk about neurodivergence. So I actually just wrote a blog about how to organise with special educational needs in mind. And Mary Mount Stevens, who's the editor of the SEN magazine, actually, she edited it for me, so she fact-checked it. So this is for children with neurodivergence, but it also can help with ourselves and other children too, as you'll see. If we reduce uncertainty, if we make sure that they understand what's going to happen next, and you can do this with now or next cards if they're very visual, or routine cards. Now, I can't remember who it was that said it, but I think it was Harriet again. It doesn't have to be prescriptive. It's not that we do math here, English here, that there. All I mean is, if there's something that they don't necessarily want to do, and there's something that they do want to do. Thank you, Amy. Yes, the Barbie Barbie with a wheelchair came out in TK Maxx last week. Last week. I think the Barbie in the wheelchair has been out quite a long time, but maybe TK Maxx has just taken it on. Yeah, so now in next cards, if we do something that they don't necessarily want to do and then do something that they definitely want to do, they can see that there is a reward for doing the thing. And it really does help with children, especially if it's tricky. Avoid sensory overload. Now, I did talk about decluttering and for your well-being, not having as much stuff, but sensory overload is all our senses. Yeah, so we've got too many lights. It's interesting, actually, different colored lights. If we can try and use softer tones, blues and whites aren't very good for the brain, especially before bed. If you use reds and yellow tones, they're more likely to help you go to sleep. And not orange, but like a yellowy orange. And minimize sound, and even textures for our foods can help. If we minimize our rules, but someone was saying on that, obviously, like we're talking about cycling, we don't want them to go in the road. There are some rules that we have to have. There are some rules that are important for to keep alive, okay? So you do need to keep some rules, but you can minimize rules. And boundaries. Someone was talking about scissors. Yes, we can have scissors, but do we need to take them upstairs? Absolutely not. Show them how to carry them properly with the blade inside your fingers, and being sensible. And actually, when my children are carrying scissors, we make sure everybody knows that that person's carrying scissors. So everybody has to be careful with that person at the same time. Also, this is when we're taking plates to the sink. I would expect children to do that, but you can change what it's made out of to make them be able to do that. So if we use plastics for children who might drop it, then it doesn't matter if you drop it. We're creating an environment that it's okay to make mistakes. Allow more time for things. So then if it's really tricky to get out the door for something that you're doing, just allow more time, and then when anything does come up, it's okay. On time, give time cues before transitions. I generally do this with all children, and I probably tend to do this with my friends and my family as well. Like I'll say, we're going out in half an hour. we're going out in 15 minutes, we're going out in 5 minutes. Just it, if someone came to me and said, right, we're going out now, I'd be like, oh no, I'm not ready. So if we make sure we give our time cues and countdown, and I do this in the morning. So we have breakfast, then we have playtime, then we have to do teeth, and then we have a bit more play before we have to put our coats on. So I'm constantly saying 15 minutes till tea time, 5 minutes till tea time, and then they're absolutely okay with it because they know what's going to happen. And providing a calming space. So if our children do get overwhelmed, that they know there's a space to go to, that they can be calm. And on that, making sure that it's not sensory overload, making sure the lights are calm, that maybe they've got a soft toy there that they know that they can cuddle. We use Alexa to help us remind for our 15 minutes transitions. Thank you. Yeah, it definitely use Alexa. I tend to let them watch the clock as well. So I'm also helping them. There's certain times that they know. So we always brush our teeth at 8 a.m. So when they look at the clock, they're actually in power. I know I'm doing the countdown, but also they can be in control as well. They can effectively timekeeps me as well. So if you want to know anything more, I do in-person and online packages, and I also have the 2 books which go through everything as well. So we've got 15 minutes, and I'm very happy to take any questions or any comments for the end.
Thank you for that, Kat. It was really helpful. I think it's from the chat as well. It's been very provocative, thought-provoking. That's what I meant to say. Yeah, Ami's just said they've got a weekly planner that she puts up so her children know what the plans are for the week. I've got the same here, Ami. Oh, I've put it back up there. I laminated mine and was saying yesterday about how because I've got a child with PDA, things change.
Yeah.
So I can't be as organized as I like being sometimes. So we have some options in the week that are like floaters, but then we have things that are set in stone. And so I write those in felt tip pen, and then obviously if they get cancelled, they get wiped out, and then he can arrange the other activities we've got for each day. And I try to have 3 things each day. And he then took that to mean 3 chores.
Oh.
So he put his socks on today. That's 1 chore done. That was a bit cheeky of him. Has anyone else got anything that they also use that they'd like to share, like a little tip or anything? Because Amy's really helpfully put up that she's got that weekly planner. Does anybody else use Google Calendar to help organize themselves? I know I do. Lots of other mums in my circle do as well. We all get our phones out every time that the kids are off playing tennis. We get our phones out. We're like, right, so on Wednesday we're doing that, so we could probably fit that in there.
Sorry, I marvel at people like that because I don't use anything, but I always think, wow, they've got a planner so they can slot us in here. I'm very much like, oh no, yeah, we'll see.
I get to tell Alexa to add to my calendar as well, which is brilliant, especially when you're opening the mail and you get another medical appointment through. You just say, Alexa, add appointment for that date, this time, for this, and that's it. It goes onto my Google Calendar. And then when I'm looking at home ed meets and things like that I want to plan, I don't put them during that medical appointment because it's already in the calendar. And it helps me because I've got ADHD. So if I can do a task at the moment that it comes up and get it done and out of the way quick, I won't forget it and put it down on the side and then miss it or anything. So my motto is get it done quick. What have we got in the chat? We have
someone just said Alexa went off when you said Alexa. I've turned mine off because I've plugged in my because I put an extra light here. I've turned Alexa off so she won't talk.
Google Calendar, for special events and meetups with friends and families. Amy said, I have everything in a diary. Otherwise, she's no idea what she's got going on at any given time, and she'll double book all the time. Yeah, pen and paper person. I was a pen and paper person until I actually lost my pen and paper.
Oh.
And that was it. Then I had a bit of a meltdown and a bit of a panic attack, because
So I'm someone who has both. I literally I handwrite everything and I put it in my phone as well. But it's just so then wherever I am, I know what I'm doing, because obviously I work with lots of parents. So I need to make sure. And on that, not that this will count for you guys, because you don't need to do this, but because I am the nanny / governess, every time I plan something with the children, I have to make sure the parents know. So we, like the Google calendars, I would just make sure their email is, so then everybody knows what we're doing, whether it's hair appointments or dentist appointments or play dates or anything like that.
Yeah, I use Alexa for shopping list as well. It helps me because I get vibro fog, so I forget what it is that I need or want. And
yeah.
as you were saying about in the kitchen, and it's one of the things when you're using something up and you're using the last of it, you put it on Alexa, then that's it. You know that that's the next thing to go on the shopping list. It's amazing.
So I use see-through containers for dried foods. The reason is it empowers the children so they can see when it's running low, and then I get them involved in writing the shopping list. Obviously, you still put it on Alexa if that's what you do, but then it's just making a purpose out of normal day-to-day things that they'll have to do when they're older. Obviously, they might just put it on Alexa, but they will still have to think of the list that they'll have to write for when they go shopping or when they do their online shopping.
A drive-wise shopping list organized, that hangs on the fridge.
Oh, I love it when you visually think about the supermarket when you're going around, and that's where you put it. That's what I do too.
So our children are now 14 and 20, so they're much older, but you know, a lot of the things that you were talking about, getting them involved very early on, at the time it felt like so much hard work because things just took so much longer. But you know, I felt that it was important to teach them those life skills, and I can tell you now we are absolutely reaping the benefits of it. You know, they are just amazing. They help out, taking initiative to help out. My daughter does all the cooking, you know, because she wants to. And so it's important. You don't always think at the time that it's important. You go, I'll just quickly do this because I just need to get it done. Because it takes so much longer to do it with them and to teach them to do it.
You've got to decide whether you want it like in the moment fast or for their life efficient. One of the reasons I wrote more to Organising actually is when I went to university, I lived with 12 people, and one of them didn't do the laundry. She just bought new clothes. One of them bought paper plates so then he didn't have to wash up. But the worst one was the person who couldn't cook. And I was like, how can you not cook anything? So I just feel really passionate about creating the next generation who are not learned helplessness, that are capable and efficient, so then they can live their lives the best that they can be. I actually wrote some more notes down from yesterday that I didn't mention. But Ruth was talking about their best learning wasn't from doing lots of things, you know, like expensive things and lots of trips that are really expensive. And the children remembered the simple things like the picnic or making their own fishing rods. These are all things that they've learned from them and they can use them in the future. And she was talking about a homeschool child might not be able to read at 8, but by 10 they might be more advanced than other 10-year-olds. And that's why I'm also passionate about reading for purpose. And as we've said about the maths homework or schools that might put them on programs if they were in a normal school, actually if they're reading because they're enjoying it and they're reading because it's for a purpose, they're more likely to want to do it. And then we're going to create children who want to do it in their future. And I do feel really passionate about it.
Hazel's asked, how do you get the older children to be involved in cooking when they don't want to? Okay,
so I would empower them to choose the foods that they're really excited about and interested in. Or I have made Pokemon ball salads before. And like make it as interesting as you can for them, and get them use the themes that they're interested in.
Magikarp salad, wasn't it, that you made? Is it Magikarp salad?
Magikarp
salad. We're a Pokemon fan here as well. Torchic soup as well.
Oh man.
I did initially, so my daughter started cooking, I think when she was 12, but at the time I paid her.
Okay.
You know, it was like, I really would appreciate somebody else cooking. And it was, you know, it's like, I'll pay you to cook. So it was almost like a job. And so she was very, very proud of the fact that she earned the money.
Yeah.
And initially people would say to her, oh, do you enjoy cooking? And she's like, no, I just enjoy getting money.
Yeah.
But so actually, over time, it's developed into her wanting to cook and wanting to try out I don't pay her anymore.
Yeah.
Because she now has other income that's far better than what I paid her for cooking. But she enjoys the process, and she doesn't actually want me to cook. She doesn't, it's her kitchen now.
Yeah.
You know, she does the grocery list and all that.
Like we said before, the risk is if you externally reward them, then that becomes the reason why they do something. But like you say, eventually they'll do it because they start to love it. We've talked about habits. If they do something 18 times, you're more likely to want to do it again. And it's hard. Maybe the first time you don't want to cook because it is tricky, and it might be a bit scary, and you might worry that people won't like your family might not like what it tastes like, or you might not like what it tastes like. But the more we do it and the more we learn, the more we find out what we do like. Also on that, I'm also passionate about not making children eat things that they don't like. I hate mushrooms, and if someone tried to make me eat a mushroom, I'd be very, very upset. I'm not allergic to them. But that's our likes and dislikes. It's okay not to like things. So that's why we empower them by saying, okay, you don't like that, but let's go and find something you do like. Let's find the vegetables. You could grow the vegetables if you've got the space. You can make it. They're more likely to eat it if they're fully involved.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of the home edit.
Yes.
And I've always, you know, a place for everything and everything in its place, because the biggest waste of time, as far as I'm concerned, is looking for something that you don't know where you've put it. And so that's something that I've instilled, you know, into the kids from an early age, is just put it where it's supposed to go, then you don't waste time.
For everyone saying who wants to see the Pokemon ball salad, it is on my Instagram, and I'll post it again. If you want to follow, it's at @more_2_organising, and I'll make sure I put all the foods that I've made. I used to have to make starters out of cheese, tomatoes and cucumbers every day for this one family, and I got bored just serving that, so I started, like, just with those 3 ingredients, making creative things for different seasons and different reasons, and it's just a bit more enjoyable for me, never mind them. But then they start wanting to use the cutter for the cheese, and it becomes another fine motor learning. Yeah, thank you for that, Amy. Do you know what, I always wonder who decided to, like, put a potato in the boiling water, or who decided to mash it. Like, so at some point in the past, someone's decided to learn how to cook it that way and practice it a different way. Potatoes and eggs, I think, are fascinating because you can eat them in so many different ways.
Right. Well, we'll stop the recording there then, and thank everybody, and thank you very much, Kat, for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.